Um, so welcome, Janet. We're so glad you're here with us.
Mary, this is going to be super fun. Thanks for having me.
It is. I'm just talking to a friend.
Exactly.
I've got a great job. um, so we're going to jump right in, you guys. And as we go along, if you've got any questions at all, feel free to throw them either in the chat or in the Q&A, and we will make sure to be looking for them. So again, welcome, Janet. We are so glad to have you with us. Let's just jump right in. How did you get started with prayer walking?
Well, I sort of literally fell into it. I'd been having a lot of, body aches and things like that. And I think the worst moment was when I walked out my back door one day and found myself in a crumpled heap because my knee had given way. So there was an alarm. And so I knew I needed to do something about my health, but I also knew that for some time God had been calling me to a deeper life of prayer. So there I was down on the concrete and decided right then and there that I would get up a little bit earlier the next morning and I would start walking. And while I walked, I would sort of, kind of take care of prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So it started out like that. There was a lot of minus in my prayers, because I was praying for my marriage, my kids, my job as a high school English teacher. And that perspective kind of changed one day when I watched a young man before 6 o'clock in the morning hand over his little blanketed baby girl to a woman on the sidewalk outside the daycare center.
Oh.
And that little girl said, "Bye, Daddy, love you." And it just, the whole scene just really struck me
Mm-hmm.
that he was going to be leaving his girl in this daycare's, multiple hands for, half a day, really, because he was going to commute an hour to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began praying for him. And then it occurred to me like, oh, open your eyes, Janet, to the needs around you and your community. Pray for the people at the Golden West restaurant, pray for the pharmacy owners, pray for the people whose homes you're passing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the shift from that being a lot of minus of my prayers to, praying on site with insight, as Steve Hawthorne would say, became a prayer walking kind of ministry for me.
Mm. That is so good. And it's just a reminder that people around us are living with the same struggles that you and I are, and the same prayers going up that you and I have, or the same struggles on our hearts or stresses on our hearts that other people have. And if we can enjoy, we can join them even without them knowing that we are praying for them. And then who knows, God might give you an opportunity later on as you're talking with them and saying, I prayed for you. And you can see you might even see the results of that. But okay, so what kind of apparel do you recommend when you go prayer walking?
You don't need anything fancy. You probably have everything that you need right there in your closet. A sensible pair of shoes that are comfortable on your feet. And I'll talk more about shoes in a little bit, but layers of clothing, particularly in the cold weather. I wear these shirts because I live in snow country. I wear these shirts underneath. They're called 32 degrees. I get
Yeah.
them at Costco, but
Mhm.
you can go right to the 32 degrees website and get ones that are even more insulated to keep you even warmer. So I
Mhm.
wear those in the winter. I wear boots when there's snow and ice on the ground. I have some examples here. So I wear these Adidas boots that have little metal spikes on the bottom of them. So, I can't walk on water, but I can walk on ice. And I wear a big, heavy um, coat that I got at the thrift store for like $6. And it's roomy enough to be insulating. If you're wearing a really tight jacket, you're not going to be really warm and you're not going to want to go. And this has got a big hood on it that I can pull tight if I need to. And also in the wintertime, I wear wool socks. And I got these online. I used to be able to get wool socks at Costco. I can't find them there anymore, but they really do keep your feet warm. And so there really is no body part other than maybe my nose in the winter that gets cold. So I dress in those kind of layers during the winter time and in the summer also, just appropriately, an important covering in the summertime or when it's really bright. If you're walking, when the sun's out, is to put sunscreen on,
Yeah.
on your face and your arms that may be exposed. Um, Oh, another thing in the winter, I tend to wear mittens rather than gloves because they're just more insulating, rather than having your fingers isolated. I wear pants or shorts that have pockets, so I have some place to stick my phone.
Hmm.
And I'll talk a little bit about that after a bit, but because I want it tucked away, and I don't want it in my hand.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things I plan. I also wear just when I'm wearing my regular shoes most of the time. These are Nikes,
Hmm.
which I recently found because they just fit my foot beautifully.
Hmm.
Um, and they have a really nice arch support to them. And I really like shoes that have a lot of traction on the bottom. If you go to a walking store or a running store kind of place, they might want to sell you shoes that don't have that much traction on the bottom. But I have found that for wet weather, I just feel more comfortable with that kind of traction. So those are the kinds of things that I look for. Yeah, in terms of also shoes, again, I found this Nike brand. I just went in the store. I said, Lord, just help me find the right pair of shoes for my foot. I'd been wearing a New Balance for probably a half a dozen different kinds of shoes the years before, but I found that they were breaking down in the inside. My shoes don't wear out. They just break down on the inside, and you
Yeah.
do want to replace your shoes about every 500 miles, something like that. Typically for me, that's about every 5, 6 months, something like that.
Yeah.
So, and then with shoes, you want to be conscious of, how your foot hits the pavement.
Hmm.
Sometimes we may either have feet that are just straight on, or if they tend to go in, we call that pronation, and or if they tend to go out a little, that's called supination.
Hmm.
So, and you can figure out if you either pronate or supinate by putting, remember construction paper?
Yes. I was just going to say the wet test.
Yeah, the wet test. You can put
Yeah.
construction paper, tape it to your floor, and then like wet the bottom of your feet, and then just walk on that construction paper and then you can just notice, how your foot actually hits the floor. So you want to just so that you can go in and ask for the right kind of shoes that are really going to fit. So, and when shoes I think are the most important item to buy and to be
Hmm.
most comfortable with, because they can affect how your joints feel later, your muscles, all of your posture, all of that. So you do want to, invest in a good pair. But starting out, I just recommend not to allow how you perceive the lack of clothes to keep you from going.
Yeah.
Because I knew that, when I was on the concrete that day, when my knee had given way, I knew I needed to get up and go that very next day because I'd
Yeah.
made the decision.
Yeah.
Sometimes we make these what I call pillow promises to ourselves, right? Your head's on the pillow and you decide, oh, tomorrow I'm gonna, not eat this, or I'm not gonna eat sweets, or I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna go walking. And if we don't like step right into that, those pillow promises, they just fade away.
Yeah. But I loved what you said, and you had some really great advice there on shoes. So, for years I wore one kind of shoe, and I just found out that that was not a right shoe for me. It did not fit my foot very well. And so then I switched to another brand. And, every manufacturer remanufactures their shoes over time and they change the way they make their shoes. And so what might have felt comfortable for you one year may not feel comfortable again when you buy the latest model. And so I've just also switched to a new brand that I have not been wearing for a while because it felt so good. And just like you said, the one thing that I look for most in my shoes is that arch support. It's got to be there. It's got to feel great. And one one tip that I got from Helen Barada once, her husband Vince worked in an REI store, and if you ever need inserts in your shoes, you want to buy for your arch. You don't want to buy for for the size of your foot. You want to buy that insole for the arch of your foot. And so she said, always check that. You can always trim those supports out, but you want that arch to hit just right. So arch support's huge for me. But just like you, I found a new brand that I'm wearing. It also happens to be Nike. I don't know, uh, but it fits, and it fits really well. And I love the way my feet feel in it. And that's how you should feel when you're getting out there to get ready to go prayer walking. You don't want to be uncomfortable as you're walking and praying. So, what other kind of gear do you think is helpful? You've mentioned
Well,
some things.
yeah, I found that grabbing my things again. Like in winter, if you don't want to invest in separate shoes for winter, these are really cool. They're called Get a Grips. And there are other types, I think, on Amazon and other places that you can just, pull around your shoes. And again, they have these little metal spikes on the bottom. So you feel secure when things are either wet or icy outside. Um, I mentioned the walking boots. I also have walking poles,
Mhm.
and these are exerstriders. See if I can get the word around there. Exerstriders. They have a rubber tip on the bottom. These are the kind that are they're not like walking poles like you would use in hiking. Um, you drag these behind you in such a way so that you can actually get an upper body kind of a workout. So the pole never goes, the tip of the pole never goes in front of you. You're always kind of pulling it behind you so that when you're walking, then you push down and you get feel a little upper body help there, to get stronger in that way. Um, the other thing I was thinking about is you can take stretch bands with you as well,
Mhm.
because about 5 minutes into your walk, if you start to feel like, oh, everything's hurting, you should just stop and do some full stretches, things that are going to
Yep.
help those muscles align your back a little bit better, and stretch bands can help with that.
Mhm.
If you can find a pole, you could, stretch your legs, you can put brace against the pole and stretch your legs in different ways.
Mhm.
If your shins are getting achy, you can kind of hold on to a pole or something like that and pull back with your toes. In Prayer Walk, I have a whole, and here's the new cover of the book. I have a whole section of suggested different kinds of exercise to stretch, to exercise, so that you're helping your joints and
Mhm.
those different muscle areas. So,
Have you ever used a walking vest? Like a weighted
n-
vest. I mean, a weighted vest.
no, I've not.
Okay.
I have walked with weights, like with wrist weights or with ankle weights in the past. At this point in my life, my weight is probably enough to drag around. But yeah, in fact, one of my Christmas presents to my daughter-in-law were ankle weights and wrist weights, and I'm like, "You go, girl. You go."
I will cheer you on.
Yeah, because I've been doing this, I'm working on year 28 of this now. The book's
Yeah.
been out for 25 years. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you begin to learn how to adapt your practices for, as you're aging and for your physical needs that you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I will say, because so many people are using weighted vests, is to not go too heavy. If you do invest in a weighted vest, don't go too heavy when you first start with one. Keep it lighter, and you might even find one that is adjustable and will go with you as you get stronger, but keep it lighter rather than heavier. you don't want to have a weighted vest on you that's too heavy and you get halfway through your walk and then you don't know what to do because you need to take your weighted vest off because you still got to carry it home. Okay, so let me ask you this: what do you not recommend to have on the walk?
Okay. So this is going to be hard for some of you, but I do not recommend that you are on your phone at all and that you not use earbuds for music, for podcasts, for your Bible reading that you didn't get done that day. Because the whole objective behind prayer walking, it really is more about interceding for your community than it is for you getting good exercise. I mean, that the exercise is the side benefit of this. It
Mm-hmm.
is a purposeful ministry to open up your eyes and to begin to intercede for the people in your community, your neighborhood. And so that's what gets me out on the streets, not because, oh yeah, I really feel like I need to get out there and walk, blah blah. But once you begin to get that sense of God needs me to intercede for my community
Mm-hmm.
today. Once you have that understanding, that becomes kind of the driving force behind, the discipline of doing it. And so if you have earbuds in, it's gonna not be a good thing because of traffic and
Mm-hmm.
other kinds of things that are going on around you. It will create, there'll be less of an awareness of that, but also it will take away from the focus.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some of you are going to say, well, I really like worship music or whatever. It really, I think it's a false thing to say that we can multitask in that kind of way with our brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's enough to be able to focus, be taking careful steps, to be watching, where we're actually walking, but also to be interceding for whatever comes with around us as well.
Well,
Um,
you can also say, Lord, open my eyes to what you want me to see and who you want me to pray for today. And if I've got my earbuds in and I'm listening to a podcast, I may not be as aware of what he wants me to see. And maybe it's just the beauty of the world around you that day. Maybe he just wants you to take in the beauty. I mean, spring is coming. I'm starting to see flowers popping up. So spring is on its way. The most beautiful time of the year. Okay, so you mentioned a few things about reducing achiness. I know one of the things for me is I have a tender spot in my back when I walk. And so you mentioned a few things of just stretching and what helps. What other things could you recommend for achiness with walking?
well, when I walk, I tend to try to avoid concrete. So if I can walk in an area like a dirt path or just asphalt on the side of the road, that's what
Mm-hmm.
I do. I'll face traffic. I'm very careful about what's going on around me.
Mm-hmm.
But it is asphalt is a much softer surface, and that will make the impact on your joints and your muscles. It will be less. So that's be the other thing that I would recommend, other than the stretching, and to not stretch before you walk. I don't know your philosophy, Mary, but it really, if you stretch cold, you might pop something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think other exercise folks, everything that I read, and I read a lot of books before I wrote Prayer Walk. I even read Walking for Dummies. It's a book. I thought, do I really need to learn how to walk? I did. So to wait a good 5 minutes in, get your muscles and everything kind of warmed up, and then stretch at that point, and then doing a really good stretch after you get back. Within just when you come in the door, do it right then.
Yeah. It is the one thing that I would see almost all the time when I taught fitness classes. If anybody left, they left. If anything happened, people were always leaving early and missing the stretch. And it's actually one of the most important things you can do after your workout is to stretch. So even if it's going on a walk, take some time to stretch. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. And I agree with you on warming up. You do need to warm up your muscles first a little bit. Um, yeah, so we're totally in agreement on that. Okay, so pros and cons of walking with a partner.
Well, first off, walking with a partner provides that sense of accountability. If she's going to meet you at the corner, that gets you up and out the door. But also there's that sense of safety.
Hmm.
I don't know where y'all live, but these days it'd be safer to walk, have somebody, who could accompany you on that walk, especially, early morning or evening, that kind of thing. Good grief, we have mountain lions and wolves in our valley now. And so I don't walk before dawn anymore. I used to get up and walk at 5 o'clock in the morning. But I don't walk in the dark. I've had too many strange encounters. I got sprayed by a skunk once.
Oh no.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, that's a bird in the bush. Oh no, it wasn't. A moment later, I was sprayed. Yeah, I've gotten chased by a raccoon. I've been rattled by a rattlesnake. I mean, I've come on cougar tracks. Just and that were fresh cougar tracks in snow. So, yeah, I don't walk
Wow.
in the dark anymore.
Wow.
I think, but also having a partner, it lends to that sort of perspective. And I remember when I was walking with my friend June. She was a faithful prayer walking partner for many years, and she was old enough to be my mom.
Mhm.
And so she would drive into town, and we would walk together. And she'd say, "Well, Janet, what about this? What about who lives in this house or whatever?" And so it increases awareness as you're praying together about the specific needs that you might find around you. And then there's also, the scripture, from Matthew 18, where two or more of you are gathered, there I am with you. And so that there is that sense of strength together in prayer as you're partnering with, your prayer walking Jesus. I always picture him kind of knocking on my front door, behold, I stand at the door and knock.
Yeah.
Janet, it's time to go walking. So, but there is that sense of, that oneness together, the accountability, the perspective, all of that is really beautiful with prayer walking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what about a con?
It's
Are there any
well, a
cons to
con
it?
can, depending on whom you're walking with, can
Yeah.
be a distraction. You can tend to veer into just simple conversation more, and oh, I've got this coming up and that coming up, and it becomes more you centric as opposed to really looking out and praying for your community. So I would say that is the biggest challenge, and I have found that there's certain people I couldn't walk with, because they just wanted to talk the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. That easily can happen. Absolutely. So then how do you schedule time into your day for prayer walking?
Mhm.
Um, so, some people watching may have littles at home, and, how do they schedule time in? You've been doing this for a long time, so you've had a lot of different seasons of life, right? So how do
Yeah.
you do that scheduling?
Yeah. So, making time, it is essential that you make the commitment to God, and that you make the commitment to your calendar, that you've actually got it on there. You set an alarm on your phone. If you're going to have to get up early, you get the alarm on. I'd set my alarm for 4:55, and I could get my clothes on and out the door in 5 minutes. And I was a working mom of four, and I still got up and went out. And part of that, in doing that, if that's what you have to do, I don't anymore, but if that's what you have to do, that means your whole schedule changes. That means, you're not binging Netflix until 11 o'clock at night. It means, that you're setting those kinds of priorities so that you can get to bed earlier. But what I found that, in God's economy, even on those days when I felt like I didn't have all the hours that I needed, God met me and provided the kind of energy that I needed for the day. So, making that kind of a routine. So if you tell yourself on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to go at this particular time. The time that's worked out for me best in these days is to have 3 days. I used to go 5 days, Monday through Friday, took the weekends off. But these days, like 3 days of the week, looking ahead, scheduling those times. And
Mhm.
I pretty much go for about an hour during those times. And that's about 3 miles for me.
Yeah.
So I can get the steps in that I want during the day and it's workable. And the time that I set is I look at, okay, the hour around sunset. I love the half hour before sunset, the half hour after. So that's kind of an ideal time. And I have to look at my calendar because I have a lot of Zoom meetings, things like this online. So
Yeah.
you have to really kind of plan ahead and think ahead, you know.
Yeah. I read an author once who said that, and she was just talking about spending time with God each day, but she said she would put it on her appointment calendar and she would do 15 minutes 4 times a day that were just set aside for him. And everybody in her office knew, don't bother her during those 15 minutes. She will not
Yeah.
respond to you. And so you just set it as a priority, like you said.
Yeah. There's some other ideas I pulled. I have a chapter called Making Time
Hmm.
in the book.
Yeah.
Here's some ideas. Prayer walk your way to work instead of driving or taking public transportation, or combine your morning and afternoon break times and prayer walk near your business.
Hmm.
Prayer walk during your lunch hour. I only had a half hour of a lunch at school, but it could be a good time of prayer fellowship, with a work partner who wants to do the same thing. If you have flexible hours, negotiate a shorter lunchtime on some days so that you can walk when you get home. Enlist your family, to help with chores so the evening hours are freer for you. There are lots of ideas in here about that. And I think I often with a lot of this is we think of all the problems.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's where my husband's mindset will tend to go. And I'm like, I understand the challenges here, but how could you make this happen? So that's what I'd like to kind of suggest to people listening is like, I understand the challenges. Life is challenging, but how could you make this happen?
Hmm. That's a great question. It's a great question for us all to consider. I know I've shared this with you, but I'm going to share this for the listeners. I have some friends who, as a group, they fly to Paris every year. There's just a handful of them, women. They fly to Paris every year, but that is their main goal: is to walk the streets of Paris together,
Mm-hmm.
praying over that city. And I thought, what a great thing to do! Have a mission mindset like that. you
Yeah.
know, they're taking it overseas, but that mission mindset can come right at your own door, right at your own community, right in your own town, or maybe a neighboring town. Maybe you go to a neighboring town one day and
Yeah.
walk it. Um,
And maybe you go to Walmart.
I've been known
Maybe
to walk the aisles of Costco to get my steps in.
maybe
So,
you just walk the aisles of Costco. Maybe you leave your purse in the car because there are going to be a lot of tempting things in those aisles. Yeah,
absolutely.
that happened too. But look, there have been times I've just walked the aisles in Walmart or Costco, just up and down, up down. Funny story. One time I was in Walmart, and this I assume was a security person began following me because she saw what I was doing and that I didn't have a card and I wasn't really kind of looking at things. I was more looking at people and getting inspired to pray for those who work there and all that. So you might want to let the security person know that you're just they're getting some good exercise.
Well, but that brings up a good point though, because if the weather is bad, you could still drive to a mall
Mhm.
and prayer walk the mall and pray
Yeah,
for all the people in the stores and pray for all the people that will come into that mall that day. And so you can do that as well.
right.
Okay, so what are some important things to remember while you prayer walk?
Well, I think you started earlier by saying that there are needs all around us, and just ask God to reveal those needs to you. And as you begin consistently walking your community, you will find that there's spiritual warfare actually going around.
Mhm.
I became aware, of you know, like a drug community that was developing within a certain area of our community. And no, I don't mean any disparagement, but it was you know, a trailer park that was just like really, I don't know, 100 feet from our home. And so I began walking that area and praying for it. And eventually, what happened was that the ownership couldn't pay the bills. And so it went up onto auction, and some people bought it and actually leveled the place. So that entire infestation of that drug infested kind of community went
Mhm.
away. um, so things like that, you'll begin to notice things like that. I remember prayer walking one morning, and I heard a fairly, you know, loud argument between husband and wife early in the morning. You don't think anybody's out there listening, right? But you
Mhm.
see those things, and so that will direct you to begin a kind of spiritual warfare for your community. Um, there and God will reveal all kinds of answers to prayer in the strangest ways. One day I was reading our little newspaper, which comes out fortnightly. This year, it comes out fortnightly, not every 2 weeks. They always say fortnightly, and it's a little tabloid newspaper. And I had been praying for this one couple that I knew lived about a block from us. And I knew that they'd not been married, that they'd raised kids together and all that. And one day I just kind of heard, God said to me, just pray that they get married. I'm like, it felt like the weirdest thing, because they were in Rotary. And I thought, if the Rotarians can't influence them to get married, what would my prayers do, But I began praying for this couple. And then I opened up the newspaper one day, and there's this little article, a letter to the editor, inviting the whole community to come to the park for their wedding, bring potluck. It
Wow.
was, and it was just mind blowing. And I think part of it was just God showing me that, as I stay tuned to the needs around me, to really listen for Him,
Mhm.
that He will show me things and direct my prayers in such a way that I can feel that I'm actually partnering with Him in
Mhm.
this ministry for my community.
Yeah.
So their needs around you, there's spiritual warfare. But another thing I wanted to mention is that people say, well, I always get distracted. What do I do? My mind will go here. And I'm like, well, I was, mom of 4 kids and full-time job as a high school English teacher and doing a million other things there as well. And I had this insight one day that, as my mind began going to lesson plans for the day, oh, wait a minute, what am I doing in that classroom? Am I really prepared for that? Oh, hello, those are needs for prayer too. So as we begin to actually take those distractions to Him, give them to Him, pray for them, then the enemy is not gonna use those kinds of distractions to keep you from the ministry that you're gonna be doing on the streets of your town.
Yeah.
So, and ultimately, any book on prayer I write has this kind of subliminal message. And that subliminal messages, and that's place where I want people to eventually go, is
Mhm.
that prayer is less about answers and it's more about access. We have access to the living God.
Mhm.
He can change us from the inside out.
Yeah.
If we're exercising, we can experience physical change, but I experienced emotional changes.
Mhm.
I used to be a woman who cried in closets because of the depression hanging over my head. I'm not like that anymore. I was a woman who let irrational fears keep me from stepping into other bigger things that God wanted me to do. And I realized one day that I was, not encumbered by fear anymore,
Mhm.
because even stepping out into the darkness in the morning, I'd have to pray against fear in this one area that was particularly dark. I'd speak to fear and tell him to leave me alone. And I got there one day and I realized, oh, where are you? Because in fact, if the things that come to our mind, those things that God is bringing to our mind are actually things that we're supposed to pray for, things that we see, people we encounter, people we're supposed to pray for, then the enemy will step back.
Mhm.
The enemy will step back because that strategy doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was life changing for me.
Wow. That is great. That is really, really great. Thank you. But before you go, Janet, we have our race. Our My Place to Race starts in less than a week. So if you have not signed up for the race yet, this would be a really great opportunity to start with on a team because Janet has a team. Janet and
Join my
friends,
team.
you can be
There's
on her
only
team.
there are only two on my team so far. My friend and me.
So
Join my team, please.
join her team. Get on it. It starts on the 14th, so you still have plenty of time. And if you wait till the 14th, the price will go up. But if you get on it now, you'll get in on a lower price. So join Janet's group now, her team now. It's called Janet and Friends. Sign up for that and join us for the race. And it's a great time to also start prayer walking because then you get a lot of things accomplished all at once. You're praying and you're exercising and you are fulfilling your 40-day or 40-mile commitment to the challenge. So that's a great time to do it all. We also have Restore Me coming up in May. So be looking for that. It's at Sandy Cove, Maryland, May 3rd through the 5th. So we'd love to have you join us. If you are in need of prayer, that is a conference you don't want to miss because it is all about prayer and you will actually have individual time just for you to be prayed over. So if you need prayer, that is something you want to attend. And then last but not least, in April, our webinar is going to be with Peg Arnold. Janet knows Peg. I know Peg. She's a wonderful, funny woman. You don't want to miss her. She'll be here talking about renewing our hearts and reviving our hearts and redirecting our hearts. So you don't want to miss that. That'll be April 13th, I believe. So check the calendars for that. Other than that, I think that is it. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Have a blessed evening, and we will see you again.